When it comes to YouTube, I'm still more of a viewer than a creator. So the first time I ever heard about Mora Watch Straps was in a review by Dave over at Just the Watch. I left a comment there and the owner of Mora, Ben, actually responded to it. And not too long after that, he emailed me directly and asked if he could give me a few straps to try. Currently, there are 4 colors to choose from, and choices from 20 and 22mm widths. You have your standard black, your standard gray, and what I refer to as New Bond and Bond Classic. So currently, your choices are a bit limited, but they are the more popular choices. It's a premium style Nato, where the material itself is very soft and supple. And I'd be inclined to call this a seatbelt style Nato if Ben hadn't already mentioned in an email that people mistakenly call it that, as the material they use is soft yet more supportive than your typical seatbelt strap. But if you're trying to picture what this thing is like, that's the closest thing to it. Although one difference I did notice is that most seatbelt style Natos are pretty thick, to the point that it can be hard to use with some watches, ones that have a tighter clearance between the spring bar and the case. But here with Mora, they're pretty thin, and thin enough that I never had an issue. Additionally, the edging here and the stitching all look great, and I always like having a sliding keeper just to keep the excess tidy, which here there is a bit of that, as they made these a little bit longer than your typical Nato at 330mm. So larger wrists really shouldn't have a problem with these. Like all premium Natos, they are extremely comfortable to wear, especially in warmer and wetter weather. And their color choices here look great on a whole variety of watches, and I tried these on a lot of different watches. Now, while they look just like any other Nato, the build quality they use is on a higher level, which is most apparent in the hardware they use, as it's all made from a solid block of 316L stainless steel. Now, if you think about it, the entire point of the design of a Nato is to act as a safeguard in case one of the spring bars fail, as they are often seen as the biggest potential point of failure on a watch. Yet a lot of modern manufacturers either use a spring bar to hold the hook in for their buckle, or just use a folded piece of metal. And according to Ben and Mora, this just introduces another potential point of failure into the system, one they avoid by using solid hardware. Which I think makes perfect logical sense. Why fix one potential issue with an identical one somewhere else? Yet if I'm being perfectly honest here, this isn't something that I'm overly concerned about. And even though I acknowledge this as a great idea, I'm not going to go out and replace everything I have over some fear of impending spring bar failure. Personally, I've never had a spring bar fail, and it's entirely possible that I'd have a different point of view here if I had. However, I think there's a bigger point at play here, and that's that by going the extra mile with the solid hardware is an indication of the quality that Ben and Mora are putting into the straps as a whole, which I think is really the point you should take away from this. From talking to Ben, I just got the sense that their goal wasn't to make the most durable Nato around, but to make the best Nato they could with the highest quality components they can find. And the extra durability that comes along with that is really just icing on the cake. So for me, if given the choice between 2 straps that are about the same price, and one is solid hardware and the other doesn't, I just think it's a clear choice to go with the one that does. Just as you would if you were picking a bracelet and one had solid end links and one had folded. So overall, from a build quality, I think these are some of the best Natos I've run into. And I only really have a few suggestions, and they're mostly cosmetic. The first thing is that the buckle itself isn't signed. It's kind of a minor thing, and one of the keepers is signed, but with just a bare buckle, I think it looks like it's missing something, and just looks a little bit generic. The second thing is actually with that signed keeper. Now overall it's good and looks solid, but when wearing it, it often seems larger than it needs to. The strap itself is pretty thin, and there's a bit of a gap between the strap and the top of that keeper. Now I think all the keepers are the same size, and I'm not sure if it's possible to make a shorter one just for that point. But for me, it does look a little off, not only from the gap, but it just kind of sticks out more than the others. And the last thing is style. Overall, I think the hardware and the design are on point. They just need more than the 4 colors to choose from, and preferably some interesting choices as well. Now, the ones they have are a good start, and honestly a safe conservative start, but I think combine what they already have with some cool patterns, and I think you'd have a real winner. Although I think it is worth noting that they are working on some new colors, as well as they are currently cutting and stitching all their straps in the US. And Ben did mention that he is working on trying to have straps 100% made in the US in the future. Now, value is a little bit tricky to talk about with this one. Right now they're on sale for $16, which for a premium Nato is excellent, but full price is $32. And even at that price, I think it's a little high, but perfectly reasonable. As if you're shopping around for a comparison, all you have to do is look at Barton and Blue Shark and what they're selling their premium Natos for, which is about $20 and $32 respectively, so Mora fits in right there. So overall, these are just great straps, and I'm personally curious if Mora is going to be able to make these 100% in the US in the future. But in the meantime, if you are looking for a strap, I think Mora is worth a look. Now, as always, let me know down below what you think about these straps. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, you all know what to do down below. Thanks for joining me.